Jules.
Hey.
Boo.
I genuinely wasn't expecting it, but I was too tired to muster up the energy for a real reaction. Oh no, stop, I'm dead. This is the thing, I absolutely adore horror games or just any sort of game that has spooks and frights in, so I find myself drawn to them more than I am pushed away from them. So what I'll do is instead I'll tell you a story of two very short tales of younger Jules and his experiences with the game Nightmare Creatures and the game Harvester. And I'm looking at Benji because he might be the only person in the room who knows what that is.
I know what Nightmare Creatures is.
That's half.
It's good.
Yeah. So Nightmare Creatures, I only had the demo of because it came with like the official PlayStation magazine back in the day, and my God, did it scare the crap out of me. Not because of the zombies. They walk towards you and they're like, oh, they look like literally Josh Brown on the come down, and like I was like chopping them in half with my bow staff, and I was like, this is a piece of piss. Walk towards this little like alcove. And out of nowhere, this giant long-limbed werewolf goes, wow, and I literally crapped myself, had to turn the game off, couldn't do it, never have gone back to playing it. I've watched long plays, but I've never gone back to playing it because I seriously just don't ever want to be put in that situation of being like, oh, I don't like the wolf man. But Harvester is another example of a game that I played way before I should have. Again, good parenting, Steve Gill there. Thank you very much for that. He left this like PC game, and I was like, oh, what is it? And I had a picture of the Grim Reaper on the front. I was like, sick, gnarly, dude. So I put that in, and it turned out to be one of the most weirdest games I've ever played, and I still don't understand it. I can't go back to it now because it feels like sort of revisiting Twin Peaks after a long break. It just is, it's messed with your mind so much that it will either make the experience worse or I still just won't get it and I won't get anything from it. But the basic premise is that there's a lot of bad stuff happening in the town of Harvester. It's a point-and-click adventure game, but it's got stuff like spiders coming out of babies' mouths. There's a moment where you can try and commit incest with your mother. There's a bit where like a guy literally turns around and goes, I'm gonna water my garden for the next 2 or 3 days or so. Like, it's weird. It's just a weird game for the sake of being weird. And it ends in like so many different odd ways with aliens coming and taking over. And you're basically playing it just like in a fever dream, just like, oh God, what is going on? But yeah, I don't ever want to return to it. And even unlocking that small modicum of a memory is causing me physical stress. So yeah, happy Halloween.
I am scared of everything, and but like you, Jules, that kind of makes me like want to play the game to kind of conquer that fear. There is one game, or rather kind of two games, I guess, that I've just conveniently never gotten around to playing. Oh, what a shame, and probably never will. And that is Outlast and the sequel Outlast 2. For me, it's like, I can't even describe it. For a lot of people, it's, all throughout Outlast 1, you're being chased, and a lot of people don't like being chased. Me, I just tend to go into a state of like hyperventilation and just kind of laugh it off. But for me, it's not being able to see. And I'm not someone who's like particularly scared of the dark. I walk around my house in the dark all the time because saving electricity, you know? But it's the fact that obviously you're in this like mental asylum with these naughty boys, and you can't see. Well, you can see, obviously, you have night vision on your camera, but your camera has batteries, and batteries are like not unlimited, and that just scares me so much. Like, just knowing that I've got like a finite time that I have to complete a room by, otherwise I'll literally lose the ability to see. I feel like going blind would be like, oh man, what a nightmare. Outlast 2, of course, is actually set outdoors for most of it.
It is,
yeah,
yes.
They don't really have the darkness kind of element in Outlast 2, but what they do have is pregnancy terror in Outlast 2. And do you know what? It's the most bizarre thing, but what freaks me out about Outlast 2 is the whole satanic baby demon pregnancy, and that just freaks me out. I'm clearly not ready for kids, clearly. But yeah, so Outlast 2,
Nice.
comma, T-O-O.
Well, the thing is, right, trying to interpret this in different ways. That, like, we talked about this before we came in, that there's no horror game that me and Mr. Jules Gill and probably other people in the room cannot go back to. Like, most stuff you can sort of like get through eventually. The thing that truly terrifies me is my own childhood, because there's just so many games that I've gone back to thinking, oh God, I loved this when I was a kid. This is amazing. This is one of the best games of all time. And you put it in and it's completely liked. So I went back to Jedi Outcast because they re-released it. Jedi Outcast, Star Wars, Jedi Outcast. I know, I loved it too, or I thought I did. And I went back to it. Those opening levels are some of the shittest pieces of shit that anyone's ever coded in their life. I'm sorry, but they are. Everyone loves those games because you can get a lightsaber, you can go and cut stuff in half, but you've got to put up with like 2 hours of just really shitty corridor-based crap where you're trying to take on stormtroopers that pinwheel around everywhere, and the aiming feels like crap. You're trying to line up like a little pixel thing, and it just feels like absolute shit. I play those games, it's called Jedi, because I want a lightsaber, all right? And I can't get one in it, and I'm sick of playing the game. I've been trying with this since launch. You have no idea how infuriating this stuff is. But it made me realize that there's so many other games that I tried going back to that my own nostalgia has clouded me from realizing that the industry's moved on so much that I can't go back to them.
But does that mean that there's an inverse relationship where if you thought it was crap as a kid, you can go back and appreciate it now?
Maybe. I've not gone back to Legacy of Kain Defiance, but maybe it's an absolute masterpiece. I mean, I doubt it. I doubt it, but maybe. But I also went back to the original Modern Warfare in preparation for the new one. That thing's light and floaty and weird. I thought it was like one of the best shooters of all time. It's not anymore. I know.
Why are you so...
I don't know, but I also went back...
You hate our fan base so much.
No, they're fine. They'll agree with me for the most part, probably not. But also Link's Awakening went back to that. There's no story in it. There's no story in it. There's just nothing in it. And I get that by the time it's finished, I like how crazy and dreamlike it is. But at the beginning of it, I was like, why am I even doing anything? Like, why am I doing anything in that game? It doesn't make any sense. The Windfish.
What's
that?
You want to attack while you're...
I did have another one. Far Cry 2 I went back to, which I thought was I was a big fan of Far Cry 2. He's not in the room. You'll not care.
Just hear a little bang.
Just Far Cry. It's a shot going off screen. Yeah, Far Cry 2 I thought was amazing back in the day, and it's aged like milk, so I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, it's just don't go back to your old games. Just play the version in your mind that your nostalgia tells you is good. And I know you're all freaking out. Trust me, I was the same way. Try and go back to the old games. They don't hold up, and it sucks. Apart from Mario 64, which is really, really good.
I felt the same about the first Metal Gear game, so that's fine.
You didn't though. You loved that. No. So did I. Still good.
So, as I mentioned on a previous episode of this program last week, absolutely nothing terrifies me. So, in the words of Steve Coldstone Austin, I say f*** fear. Not bothered.
You're the hardest man in the office.
Yes, absolutely. Coldstone Stephen Austin. So, but despite that, there is one game which is yet to be released that actually has me like biting my fingernails with some degree of anticipation. Get that right. So anyone who can tolerate a conversation with me for more than 5 minutes will know two things. One, I have an ineffable passion for flags. And two, I have an equally ineffable passion for Shenmue. Right?
Yeah. Shenmue!
So anyone who hasn't played Shenmue, let me just take you back in time a little bit. The second game in the series, Shenmue 2, ended on a cliffhanger. What it was supposed to be, I think, chapter 3 of what was 11 planned chapters, but the fact that it ended up costing Sega something in the region of $200 million, and they had to close their entire hardware division and, basically stop making consoles as an almost direct consequence of that game. We sort of thought, well, maybe we're not going to get those remaining 8 chapters.
Yeah, maybe.
And 18 years later, we still haven't. But thanks to a Kickstarter campaign, they managed to raise somewhere in the region of, $70 million, something like that. So they could actually make a Shenmue 3. Now,
well, part of it,
yeah. Now, there's a couple of problems with this. One, Shenmue was, as much as I love it, the best game of all time.
It so is.
It wasn't a good game in the year 2000. How do you migrate that 18 years forward in time with everything that the industry has been through, the expectations, and the expectations of a bunch of fans who want it fulfilling? Basically, you can't. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a car crash, which is fine, but I sort of like put in as much effort as possible to do as good as it can. And having played the demo, it does feel like Shenmue, but unfortunately, it does feel like Shenmue. Which
they've nailed it.
Yeah, they've absolutely nailed that terrible experience. So I sort of like, the best it can do is conclude the story. I'm a bit worried about where that goes. Like I say, they've been stuck in a cave for 18 years.
Yeah.
I sort of like, I'd made peace with the fact I was never going to know, and now I'm going to find out a conclusion to it, which could be abysmal. So I sort of just don't want to play it and just let it rest and just assume, oh, well, he died in there. That was the end of it. But I'll do it, and it'll be bad, and then I'll be back on this in 10 years' time to talk about Shenmue 4.
Back when F.E.A.R 1 came out, my friend played it, and he was trying to like pitch to me how amazing it was and how like horror and horrific it was. And he was like, oh mate, I've played this for like 2 hours, and I literally had to physically stop myself because my heart was beating so hard, and I just had to drink loads of water just to calm me down. I was like, yep, cool, great, it sounds amazing. And he bloody gifted it to me on the Steam sale, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'd love to play this at some time. I still haven't installed it at all. I haven't played it, haven't even considered playing it. And the other one is also like just any VR game, because Zombie Training Simulator, which I mentioned like a couple of months ago, I think.
Is that the one with the cardboard one?
Yeah. It's fine. It's not horror at all. But when they're like this close to you, it is so freaky. And just like having that sense of like them being so close to you, and then they're really not. It's just enough for me to be put off of horror games in general.
It's like when Benroy leans down and wants your attention. And he just like gets right up next to you and you don't know.
All right, mate.
Yeah, he's like, all right, mate.
Another one actually is Outlast. I wasn't going to talk about this, but you've mentioned it already. But basically, I did play this, and I played about basically I got up to the bit where you go into the library bit, and then it's like the first like major jump scare really, essentially. And there's a guy on a spike, and he doesn't move or anything up until you get next to him. And that is the worst jump scare I've ever experienced in a horror game. And that was enough to me to just go, yeah, f*** this, and I'd alt F4 immediately.
And you've never gone back to it?
Never gone back to it at all.
Brilliant.
Never considered it, never want to go back to it.
Right, the one that I'm too scared to play is one that has been legendary in the horror game canon. Yes, Jules Gill, look afraid, look very afraid. Because I'm talking obviously about PT, which is playable teaser for Silent Hills. And I'm mostly scared of that because of the price it costs to get a console with it on. But no, everything I've heard about this game looks fantastic. I've watched the videos, I've read the stuff about it, I've engaged in the legend and enjoyed it. But I'm just really like, there's something about me, but actually playing it kind of scares me because I A, don't want to be disappointed by it, and B, don't want like to actually be scared less by it. I don't know, it looks terrifying, and all the stuff that you see about the way that they innovated the controls, and Lisa like following like behind your back. I saw a thing on Twitter where she's like glued to the back of you when you're walking around, but you can't see her, so you just know that she's there, and that's how she interacts with things. I think it's one of like the peak scary games out there, and that's the piece of me that goes, oh, once you've played it, you've hit peak, like where are you supposed to go from there? Like engaging with everything else around it and like kind of wishing for the reality of Silent Hills I find a lot more appealing, because then I don't have to have nightmares from Lisa. So that's my way of doing it. But yeah, if I could play PT, I would, but also maybe I wouldn't.
Ooh, mysterious.
Mysterious.
It's like the end question mark.
Yeah.
The end?
The end? Yes.
Oh, it is the end.
Happy Halloween!